So let's get started. It's 4:03 by my clock. I see there is a few people just joining, but I'd like to welcome you all to Front Row with the faculty at St. Joseph's College of Maine. My name is Joanne Bean. I'm the Vice President and Chief Advancement Officer here at the college, and it's my pleasure to preside over this afternoon session and to introduce our speaker and to help facilitate the questioning and discussion period that will happen at the end. So before we begin, though, I will share that, again, your microphones, if you wouldn't mind muting them, that helps with any background noise, and we'll make sure that we can hear clearly and distinctly what Kevin has to say. We will ask you to use a chat function to give us any questions that you might have. Feel free to do that during the talk or during the end. We'll have a little over 20 people joining us this afternoon, so it's also fine to jump in and ask your question after Kevin has given his presentation. Feel free to do that. So this is recorded. We hope to repurpose this, and all of our Front Row with the faculty presentations, you'll find them on our website. So thank you so much for joining us. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Michael K. Harrington, who goes by Kevin. Kevin Harrington is the Program Director of the Health Administration Programs at St. Joseph's College. He also is the Assistant Professor of Health Administration and Health Information Management at the college. He's published in many ways, published in the Healthcare Finance and Reimbursement through the Jones and Bartlett publication, and he's in the third edition that is scheduled to go out the fall of 2022. He's working on a second publication on the impact of various faith communities, such as the Sisters of Mercy, throughout the years of their influence on U.S. healthcare delivery system and what it is like for us today. He is an ordained permanent deacon for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. That happened in 2017. He's appointed to the position of assistant to the associate to the vicar for clergy for permanent deacons in 2019. He serves on various committees at St. Joseph's College. He assists in various organizations, and at the request of the Joint Commission of Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations, he is there to navigate them through the accreditation process, many of these organizations. And I always ask our speakers to give me a little bit of a fun fact so that I can share something that you might not know about Kevin. And his is very interesting. So Kevin traveled the world playing ice hockey, and he was highly recruited as a player and retired from the NCAA as an ice hockey referee. So there you go, Kevin. That's my introduction for you. And I thank you so much for your time and for all the preparation you have for this afternoon's presentation.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. It was hard to come up with a fun fact. Some of you know me. I just couldn't. I was like, what can it be? So just to build off of that, I played hockey with some of the, I did it at a pro level and a amateur level. I skated with the USA women's hockey team against the world champion Czechoslovakian team. I officiated one of their games. Hockey just brings you close to people, and it doesn't seem like a people sport, but it truly is. I got to meet many people. It just the genuine relationships that you make over the years, and so it was another, just a part of my life in another life. Really, it was a little while ago, but it's something that really helps shape you. It gives you discipline and gives you something to strive for. That also helps in the teaching aspect because you're always trying to give back. So, but thank you for coming out today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for having me, because I'm going to share with you some stories that were inspired, through some of the work in the church. And I'm going to right now just share my screen. And I'll put up the presentation for you. Joanne, can everybody see that, the blue screen?
Yes, we can, Kevin.
Great. So my presentation today is about the Eucharist and the miracles have taken place throughout the world. I know I say United States, I ended up just pulling out 5 or 7 examples, and of which only one was actually investigated in the United States. But when we look at the miracles, the center core of this presentation is really the Eucharist. And the Eucharist is the most holy body and blood of Christ. And that's a miracle, that's a mystery that we celebrate when we go to Mass. And, you know, it's really considered to be one of the greatest sacraments. You know, not only is the Eucharist a symbol, but it's a symbol also of Christ's spiritual presence. And it's a reminder of Christ's self-offering. So we can have this present with us every week. And it shows us that, you know, Christ is truly present in, you know, this sacrament. The Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us that, you know, in the most blessed sacrament of the Eucharist, the body and blood, together with the soul and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ, and therefore whole Christ, is truly and really substantially contained. So I tell you this because I'm just trying to give you some framework of, you know, how these miracles come into play and who sees them, who's the one, you know, reporting them and giving their opinion. So to take a little bit further, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it states that, you know, the presence of Christ is real in the fullest sense. You know, Christ, you know, God and man, makes himself holy and entirely present to us. And it's the conversion of the bread and wine into Christ's body and blood that becomes present in the sacrament. So, you know, in the gospel readings, when we hear them or read them, you know, Jesus is not only present to us in the scriptures, he's present to us in the living church. He's also present to us in the examples of the saints. And he is truly present with us in the most basic sense, or humble and silent appearance of bread and wine. Sorry. Nope. Technical malfunction. You can edit that, right, Joanne, so they don't see that?
Absolutely.
So the Council of Trent, you know, before we get into some of the examples, you know, the Council of Trent, you know, declared that Christ is truly present in the offering or the species of bread, and the bread and wine truly become the body and blood of Jesus Christ. Now, the bread and wine cease to exist, though the appearance of the properties, or some may call it accidental matter, of the bread and wine still remains. So when you can look at it and say, well, I see the bread and I see the wine. Well, that's the accidental matter. The presence has now been changed. When the consecration of the bread and wine take place, the whole substance of the bread and wine are changed. And it's changed through this process called transubstantiation. So this gives us the idea. Now, I kind of gave you a very brief summary of the Eucharist and, you know, what some of our you know, guiding bodies will tell us about the Eucharist. And now, you know, I'll bring to your attention some of the you know, miracles. So when I was doing some of this, I found some through my own investigation in just what I do. But when I stumbled across the Vatican International Exhibition, they actually, you know, supply, you know, well, there's 152 documented miracles or over that, but they supply all the information, the pictures, the documentation, PDFs, information, everything supports all the miracles that have been recorded. And it's given, you know, anywhere in the world. So they have exhibits all over. So I was able to go in and, from what I have and what they have, give you a couple examples that might, you know, just bring to light, you know, a different framework, if you will, you know, a different feeling or presence with the Eucharist. So our first example is from the miracle in Siena in 1750 or 1730. some thieves broke into the church at San Francisco in Siena and stole a chalice. A chalice is a, maybe 8 to 10 inch high, like cup, if you will, with a stem and a lid. And there was 351 consecrated hosts in this chalice. 3 days later, the hosts were found all intact in an alms box in the sanctuary of Santa Maria in Provinciano. And there was a celebration and a procession with the hosts back to the church of San Francisco. Now, when you're saying, well, what's the miracle here? Well, in the Eucharist itself, it still has the accidental matter of the bread. Now, the bread will deteriorate over time. Now, it is our Lord, and the bread itself will deteriorate. But when they took the 351 hosts back, to this day, the hosts have not deteriorated. They're still in the same form and the same beautiful presence that they were the day that they were consecrated and put into the chalice. And this was actually tested, as early or as recently as 1922, that the hosts were tested for authenticity. And as of today, the hosts are still adored in Siena and as in every celebration of the Eucharist. But the one thing that gave me it put some framework around this and really gave it even more life than what it already had. Pope St. John Paul II visited Siena in September of 1980, and in the presence of these hosts, he said, and he's quoted, "It is the real presence." And we can all relate to him. He was someone that could really connect with every community. And he was present in the same room with these hosts and was able to say, he could feel that the hosts were the real presence of the Lord. Now, the next miracle is the miracle of Krakow, Poland in 1345. In this one here, you can see a common thread. There was a couple times they were actually stolen out of a church. This is another one where thieves broke into a little church on the outskirts of the city. Now, they stole the monstrance that contained consecrated hosts. Now, the monstrance is a little bit bigger of a cross, and it has a compartment. They placed hosts in there. So it's much bigger. So the people who stole it got away, but they discovered that the monstrance, they're very expensive. They thought it was made of gold, and it wasn't. So in their, I guess when they were running through the swamp in the muddy area, they realized that the monstrance wasn't worth much to them, and they threw it away. So once everybody heard about the robbery, the priests got together and they were out looking as soon as they could. But when darkness fell, there was a mysterious light that was seen coming out of the swamp, the muddy area. And it wasn't just a light, like a small light, maybe a flashlight or a burning candle. This was a huge beam that came out of the swamp area. And the villagers were extremely frightened. So they went and they got the bishop. And the bishop fasted and prayed for 2 days before going out to retrieve the monstrance. And when they got out there, they found the monstrance, and they realized that the origin of the beams of light were actually the hosts. When they took the monstrance out of the swamp, all the hosts were unbroken, and they were deemed to be the source of light that was telling everybody where the monstrance was. And when that took place, the king built a church of Corpus Christi in Krakow in honor of this miracle. And every year during the celebration of the Solemnity of Corpus Christi, it's celebrated. So as you can see, the host in this instance, the bread should have deteriorated. It was in a muddy, watery swamp. Nothing happened to the hosts. The hosts were untouched, and they were still in the same presence as they were when they were consecrated and put into the monstrance. Now, the next miracle. Now, this is where we kind of bring science in a little bit. This was in Lanciano, Italy in 750. A monastic priest was celebrating Mass, and he was having doubts that, I guess he was looking, using reason. I can't tell you what's going through his head, but he doubted that the Lord was truly present in the consecrated host. So as he was celebrating Mass, he saw the host turn into flesh and the wine turn into blood. Now you're thinking, well, that's only one person. He's the only one that saw it. In this one, it's not the case. It was visible to the whole audience. The flesh is still intact to today, and the blood was divided into 5 unequal parts, which together have the same weight as each one does separately. So it's a unique, I tried to wrap my head around this. So it's very unique and inconsistent as far as we can't put block A into block A and B into B. It's totally unique. So in 1970, the Archbishop of Lanciano and the provincial superior got together and, with Rome's approval, requested that Dr. Edward Linoli, director of a hospital in Arezzo, and professor of anatomy and histology and chemistry, basically a lab physician or doctor, and asked him to go through some scientific examinations of the relics of this miracle, which occurred, 12 centuries earlier. And on March 4th, 1971, he came back with his detailed report, and he had 5 major findings. And he stated that the miraculous flesh is authentic flesh consisting of muscular and striated tissue of the myocardium, or in other words, of the heart. The miraculous blood is truly blood. The immunological study showed that there was no preservatives used, no salt or anything like that. The blood type was AB negative, which was consistent with the shroud and also of the community at the time when of the Middle Eastern communities of the time back in with the Lord. So it was consistent with that. There wasn't any weird findings with that. That the proteins also in the blood contained the normal distribution found in human blood. So it wasn't blood that was transferred from something else. And I already said this, but there's no histological dissection that revealed any trace of salt or any type of preservative that would make the blood stay where it's at today in an artificial way. And then in 1973, to take it a step further, the World Health Organization, or WHO, appointed a scientific commission to validate Linoli's findings. And they worked about 15 months, and they did about 500 tests on all of the relics. And they verified that the fragments that were taken from Lanciano could no way be linked to an embalmed tissue. So in other words, no one placed any tissue from another remains that had any embalming fluid that would keep the tissue the way it was, looking, as fresh as the day it was, found in, 12 centuries ago. And also the nature of the fragment of the flesh. They declared that it was living tissue because when they did their test on the tissue actually responded in a way that was distinctive to living beings. So their test was actually validated that the flesh was alive, and their reply fully supported Professor Linoli's conclusions. And then in their abstract with the WHO and the United Nations, they published this in 1976 in New York and Geneva. And they stated that science is now aware of their limits. They have come to a halt, face to face with the impossibility of giving an explanation. So they used everything they could possibly do, every test that you could actually say in healthcare, you rule it out, or try and negate what was believed to be found. They couldn't overturn anything that was originally found in the findings, that it was what it was said to be, and that of the body and blood. Now the next miracle was the miracle of Scala, Italy, in 1732. Sister Maria Celeste Crostarosa found a monastery of the Most Holy Redeemer, together with St. Alphonsus Maria Liguori. Now, every Thursday in Scala, Italy, they would have the exposition of the Most Blessed Sacrament for public adoration. And from September 11th, 1732, for 3 consecutive months, every Thursday during the solemn exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, the signs of the Passion of Christ appeared in the host contained in the monstrance. And this can be confirmed not only by the nuns and the people that were in the area, but Bishop Santoro Scala and the Bishop of Castellamare were also involved. And on top of this, the miracle was also validated by the doctor of the church, a doctor of the church, St. Alphonsus Maria Liguori. So everything was, these aren't happening in an isolated occurrence. These are happening where people are able to see it, and the next two will also, bring us down that same path. There's not just one person that's seeing these miracles. They're, generally speaking, they're always with other people involved that can see it. This one here, somewhat, it's a little bit funny at some parts, at least for me it is. The miracle of Turin, Italy in 1453. Now this is one where the army of Rene d'Angio met the army of the Duke of Ludovic of Savoy. So the soldiers came in and just totally demolished the town. Not much left. They just had their way with the whole community. Well, one of the soldiers who invaded the town made his way into the church and got into the church and went up to the tabernacle and wedged open one of the small doors of the tabernacle. He reached in and took a monstrance, and thinking it's going to be worth, it could be gold, be worth a lot of money, wrapped it up in a bag, and he left Turin on a mule. I'm thinking, if you stole something, the last thing I'm getting on is a mule. I'm gonna, that's not what I would do. So he gets on the mule and he's going through the town, and the mule, the she mule, just collapsed, and the bag fell to the ground and broke open. Well, at that point, the monstrance lifted into the air, as high as the homes that were in the town. So it was up in the air pretty high. And then they went and got the bishop. So once the bishop got to the plaza, he looked up and saw that, the monstrance is in midair. And then all of a sudden the monstrance dropped to the ground. And then after the monstrance hit the ground, he saw the hosts were still in midair. So he got down on the ground and prayed the words of the Emmaus disciples, praying, "Stay with us, Lord." And with that said, he then raised up a chalice as high as he could lift it, and in the air. So then the host slowly came down, and all the hosts ended up in the chalice, and so it was collected. So you can see, these miracles are taking place in front of a lot of different people, and it seems to happen, surrounding the Eucharist, but also inappropriate, removal of the monstrance or chalice, or taking of the Eucharist from, the house of the church. And that's when we see a lot of the miracles come into play, and that's when they really come on display, because there's many miracles I didn't bring up here. So these last few were really about someone taking the host and finding out that it was much more. One would thought that I'm going to throw the monstrance away, it's no good, when in fact it's priceless. So, these were all about taking something, removing it from the church. The next miracle is a very interesting miracle. It's involving Blessed Imelda Lambertini. Now, she lived in Bologna, Italy in the 1300s, and she always had this drive. She wanted to receive our Lord in the Eucharist, and she was always trying to do that. And she was told, she can't do it. So she figured, let me join the Dominican convent at the age of 9. I figured that's going to get her on, maybe the fast track to receive the Eucharist. So she does this, and the chaplain or the priest at the convent said, no, you're not. You have to be 12 years old. That's our rule. You have to be 12 or you can't receive communion. So she would pray constantly on this. So in the year 1333, at the Feast of the Ascension, she would go to Mass in the morning. So again, here's another scenario where she's not by herself. She's with other sisters and then people in the community. So she goes to Mass. At the end of Mass, one of the sisters is over, putting back, all the, the chalices and things like that were used for Mass. So she heard a noise, and then she turned around and she looked back and she saw a host over Blessed Imelda, just hovering in midair. And she was just taken back and she panicked, and she ran and got the chaplain. So the chaplain comes running back in. He sees the host, and he runs back and gets his vestments on, comes back in to Imelda, and she's still kneeling there, and the host is still hovering over her head, right in front of her. And he reaches up and he takes the host out of midair. Now, this was done in front of the community that just got done going to Mass. So he takes the host out of midair. She receives Holy Communion. So her wish is her prayers are answered. So the commotion dies down. All the people from the local area leave after, they left the church or the chapel. And so the Mother Superior, looked over to Imelda and said, it's time for breakfast. And Imelda was still kneeling down with a smile on her face. So she goes over closer to her. And as she gets closer to Imelda, she still sees her smiling and kneeling in prayer. But Imelda had passed away. She was dead, kneeling down. And, people have said that, she died of love, and that she wanted the Lord so much, but she was actually ill. She had a childhood illness. The Lord wanted her more than she wanted him. So he brought her to her. And where it gets even a little bit more just beautiful, Blessed Imelda's body is incorrupt. So if you can go online, I wasn't able to put the pictures in the presentation today. You can actually go online and see her body in a glass casket. And there's been zero decay of her body since the year 1333 when she passed away. So she's considered to be the patroness of First Holy Communicants. So oftentimes I'll give some of the kids that are receiving Holy Communion, I'll give them the prayer card. And, on the prayer card, it gives a little bit of a story. And so they can see this. But if you can go online and look, and her body has had zero decay take place. And she looks, it's a beautiful picture of her. There's a lot of pictures of her. So in closing, today we're involved in such a busy, superficial culture. And sometimes we can take this awe-inspiring gift and miss its importance. So, if we find ourselves stopping and not appreciating the gifts from God, we may find ourselves going down a path that's not meant to be. Maybe we'll be more interested in success or money, wealth, pleasures, rather than hungering for our Lord. So, and Jesus doesn't want us to wander away from him. He truly wants us to be close to him. He wants us to be his friend. So these miracles help bring us together. And when in time you may be in doubt or you may need some inspiration, we can see this happen in these miracles. So if you go to the chapel at St. Joe's College of Maine there, which I often frequent when I'm up visiting, or if you're in your own parish, take time to be in the presence of the Lord and enjoy, the time spent, whether it be, in prayer and mass at service, and just allow him to be part of your life and help you grow and see things just a little bit differently as we saw things today. We saw some science. Science tried to negate some things and it didn't work. Not that it didn't work, it just supported everything that took place. So enjoy the presence and enjoy the relationship. And that's all I have, Joanne. I don't have anything else, but just I really appreciate being able to share some of my thoughts and findings through the years with everybody.
Wow, well, thank you so much, Kevin. Quite incredible stories, and stories that I'm sure some of us and many of us have not heard of. So really appreciate you bringing that to light for all of us. Now it's time to open up for questions and discussions. Kevin, you might diminish the slide piece just so we can see people. And there you go.
Yep.
Everybody's coming back. Nice to see everyone. And what sort of questions or points or anything that you'd like to address for Kevin?
It's like you're in class and you ask a question and everybody looks down at the desk.
That's right.
They won't make eye contact.
Well, it's a story of believing in miracles, certainly. And so I bet if we were to ask each and every person on this call, they all might have a story of either participating in witnessing a miracle or hearing of a miracle. And, Kevin, I know aside from this wonderful research you presented of these beautiful miracles, talk about your personal experience with miracles. I know you've shared a little bit with me the short time we've known each other. So do you want to open up a little bit about that?
Sure. It's been a long journey in life. You find yourself on different paths. So I woke up on a ventilator one day. I had nothing else to do. I see a priest and a doctor, and they said, "You're not going to live through the weekend." So I thought, I got to change something. Something's not right. So I changed my path. I make a deal. I said, look, if I walk out of here, because I know there's other ways I can get out. If I walk out, I'll serve other people. I'll work to make people's lives better. So I get involved in healthcare. That's where I met Patrick Kennedy. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't what I was, the deal. So I started to teach, thinking, this is great. It's refreshing. I feel good. I can, inspire people. A couple years is okay. Then it's something else. So I was driving by a church one day. I didn't go there. No one knew me. So I stopped in, unbeknownst to me, because I had no idea I was going there. I looked at it. I was like, oh, look at that church. Next thing you know, I'm in the parking lot. And I was discerning this pull to the altar for 7 years. I'm constantly just pushing it off, saying, you can't be talking to me. And I'm thinking I'm crazy. And so I go into the church, I go to mass, I leave. So I go back once or twice more. And on the third trip through, it was as if I was having an argument in my mind and I was losing. So I'm looking at the altar. I'm like, what is it you want me to do? I have no idea what's going on. I'm just in a different state. And I said, fine, I shouldn't do this, but let me ask you for a sign. I said, I don't know what you want me to do. I have no clue what's going on. I just don't know. So tell me what it is you need me to do. And I thought, you know what? It's going to take a couple years, come through. What happens? It doesn't happen on my time. I want it right now, but he's going to take his time. So I'm walking out of the church, and the priest would stay there and shake your hand and say, have a good day. So I shook his hand, have a nice day. And the deacon grabs my hand, who I had no idea who he was, grabs my hand, and he won't let go. I'm like, okay, what? He says, I have to talk to you. And I said, oh my gosh, what did I do? I didn't trip anybody. I didn't take too much of the precious blood. I don't know what I did. What does this guy want? And he won't let go of my hand. I'm like, you shake a hand, you try and loosen up a little bit, maybe he'll let go. He doesn't let go. And the person he's talking to walks away and says, looks me square in the eyes and said, have you ever thought about being a deacon? And I said, yeah, I think I have. I've been waiting for a sign for about 8 minutes. And it's taken entirely too long for this sign to come through. And he looks at me. And I said, no, I'll tell you later. So that's not the end of it. So I asked him to be my sponsor on the altar to vest me when I get ordained. So Pat's on the altar with me, and same with Deacon Jack Pfeiffer. We're of 12 guys. 11 have their vestments. I don't have my vestments. Jack's walking around the altar looking for me. I'm like, Jack. And he's like looking at me. Oh. And he comes over, just throws the vestments at me and says, here, give. He didn't know who I was. And I said, Jack, you're supposed to help me. He said, no, you'll do fine. So I'm right in front of the Archbishop. Glasses are going all over the place. I'm trying to get the vestment on. But just to show that I didn't know Deacon Jack, not this Jack that's with us, Deacon Jack. And it was one of those things that, 7 years of just going back and forth, trying to see what was what. But that, and there's other stories. Mine pales in comparison to other guys that go through this and get different signs, and just the pathway to the altar. I think every one of them can tell us a story that would top mine. Mine makes it look like I went to the Acme and went grocery shopping compared to what these guys do and what they've experienced. So, but that's, it's kind of where my path has taken me. So I'm not just a faculty member at the school, and it's just it's a nice feeling. It's nice. It's been a nice journey that I've been part of. Now that had to spark some questions. Everybody's like, you got to be typing away.
Thank you for sharing that. Really, really nice of you to share that, Kevin. Yeah. Other questions? I don't want to be taking this all away from, we have 18 participants now. Let's have a question coming from somebody. Go ahead. You can just speak up rather than typing. Sometimes that's easier.
I bored him to death, Joanne.
Yeah, you can.
It might be a miracle if they ask a question. You never know.
Deacon Kevin, I'll jump in and give you a hand here. Dwayne, you mentioned Deacon Kevin is the assistant to the associate to the vicar for clergy. I'm the associate to the vicar for clergy that he's the assistant to.
Wonderful.
To whom he's the assistant. So, also, I'm a 2016 graduate of the master's program here at St. Joe's. So it's
wonderful. Thank you.
A little bit of a homecoming. And my sons went to Archbishop Carroll High School.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And I was at the retreat that Bishop McFadden, first retreat he ever gave at the Malvern Retreat House when he was the secretary to Cardinal Kroll. So, it's a small world.
Small world. Someday we'll have to have a cup of coffee over that, for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll be up in Maine sooner than later. You never know.
Please.
Couple thoughts. Well, my story in terms of if you're looking for a sign, I was going through a health issue in my first year in the seminary, which turned out to be an abscess tooth from an incomplete root canal, but nobody could figure out what it was. So every doctor under the sun, and in Philadelphia, there's plenty of doctors here. Nobody could figure it out. They were ready to just put me on antidepressants because they thought it was, there wasn't anything physically wrong with me. And then all of a sudden, one day, brushing my teeth, a lump appears, and I go to the dentist, and turns out it was that root canal 7 years earlier that was incomplete and caused an infection which should have killed me, but it was caught in time, and I started feeling better. But during that time when I was ill and in the seminary, I went to the assistant director, I guess Kevin's predecessor, Deacon Kevin's predecessor, and I was ready to quit, or I wasn't going to quit. I said, well, I think maybe this is a sign I shouldn't be here. Did anybody ever hit a wall while in formation? And it was a nun, Mercy nun, Sister Santa D'Angelo. And she said, yeah, everybody hits the wall. You just hit it sooner than everybody else, which that didn't make me feel any better. Anyway, and then they found the abscess, and I was getting better and all that. But I was still uncertain whether I should continue. And my sons, who were thinking about Archbishop Carroll as high school at the time, were in an academic camp at my alma mater, Roman Catholic High School, downtown at Broad and Vine. And on their last day, I drove them down, and I'm walking around town, and I had my breviary with me to pray the Liturgy of the Hours. And I went into the cathedral, and nobody was around. And I'm just staring at the floor of the cathedral, thinking someday I'll be lying on this floor during the rite of ordination, if that's God's will. And I said, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, can you please send me a sign? And, like Deacon Kevin, I'm waiting like a candlestick to fall over, or, nothing big. A lightning bolt would have been fine, or, or one of the lights fall from the baldacchino or something like that. Nothing. So I'm waiting. Like, all right, Lord, any time now, whenever you're ready. Nothing. So I thought, all right, well, I'm not getting my sign today, so I'll just pray morning prayer. So I'm going through morning prayer, and it was the Liturgy of the Hours is broken up into 4 weeks. So it was the fourth week. It's called the Psalter. It was the fourth week, Friday of the fourth week, and at the end of morning prayer and evening prayer, there was a series of intercessions, petitions, and so I get to that part. And I'm reading, I begin to pray the intercessions, and the response for that day, the response of the day was, may the Lord bring to completion the good work he has begun in you. And I just I shut the breviary, and I was kind of like a chill, even just saying it now, chill just came over me, and I said, there's the sign. So, and I went back to Sister Santa, and I said, Sister, well, they figured out what was wrong with me, and I'm on the mend, and I said, you might end up throwing me out, but I'm not going to quit. And 2 years after I'm ordained, they made me the boss. So, and then we brought Deacon Kevin on, and Deacon Pat Kennedy's also a big help. Deacon Jack Pfeiffer, all these guys. I couldn't do what I do without the support of all of our deacons, and they work in different areas, different committees, doing different things. So we're the foot soldiers of the Catholic Church. So that's my story.
Thanks, Mike.
Great.
Anybody else have any questions or anything?
Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, Jack, how are you?
Okay, I just want to say you had me when you said you got out of the hospital and the first person you met was Patrick Kennedy, and you thought it just wasn't enough. So I love that. But a lot of miracles have happened to me to get to where I am. So I just want to tell a quick one, because some of them could take 45 minutes, and we don't want to do that. But 3 years after I was in the program, I was reading my morning prayers on a Saturday morning, and I closed my one eye and the book disappeared. I thought, well, this doesn't seem right, and so I called my eye doctor right away, and they said to come over. I went over, and her assistant said, come back next week. We really don't have time today. It's nothing big. So I went home, sent the transplant team. I had a kidney and a pancreas transplant, and sent them an email saying what happened. The next morning at 6 o'clock, I have an email from them saying, get to the hospital. We think you're having a stroke. So I went to the hospital, and they looked in my eyes, and it wasn't a stroke. It was the pressure in my eyes. One was 59 and one was 60. And they said that my optic nerves had blown apart like a water balloon that burst. So it was a permanent blindness. I'm mostly blind on my left eye and about half blind on my right eye. So my immediate thoughts were, what now? You know, I have to be able to proclaim the gospel on the altar. I have to be able to read books for classes, you know, because we're in formation, and, you know, we all know how tough formation can be. So Maureen and I went to Mass, you know, at Sunday morning. I received communion. I'm kneeling there, and I'm saying, okay, Lord, this is what's going on. What do you want me to do now? What are we going to do? How are we going to work this out? Because when I pray, you know, I pray to him like he's a friend like that. And, you know, what's his name? The music starts playing for the recessional hymn, and the choir starts singing. And they start singing, I walk by faith and not by sight. I said, okay, he gave me my answer. So here I am today, and somehow I'm still getting through to be able to preach the gospel and, you know, proclaim the gospel and preach a homily. And by not being able to read, I can't read notes when I give my homilies. And it worked out for in the information because they wanted us to stop using written notes for preaching. So I never have notes when I go up, and it's more of a conversation. So God has been with me every step of the way. Many times my wife and I'll sit on the couch and we'll just think about something that happened and say, his hand was on my shoulder every minute of every day, no matter what the situation. And I can always take peace in that. So everything revolves around like that Holy Communion, as you were saying, Eucharistic miracles. And I believe another counterpart of that is there's always other people present when it happens. I think there has to be, because many times I would not have even have recognized the miracles if it wasn't somebody standing right beside me that, you know, just says, whoa. So yeah, everything you said, I took right to heart. It was a good presentation.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you for your story, Jack. Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Joseph, you look like you have something ready to come out, like you have that question ready to go, and you're just thinking, should I ask it?
Not so much. I just came out of an appointment as well, so I had to leave early, but there's always so many correlations with every time I receive Eucharist with so many things. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And, you know, here, I
Yes.
too feel like I've had a lot of miracles to attribute to, you know, being alive and enjoying life on life's terms at this time in my life. So thank you for doing this, Deacon Jack. When I saw your name, I thought of Jack Pfeffer here, who's a brother of Chuck Pfeffer, who died with the Philadelphia Archdiocese many years ago. So your name's more common than I thought.
Yes. Yeah, Pat and I found, and Mike found that out recently too. There's another couple, slight variation of the name, but they look exactly the same. A couple scares came up recently, so.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing this, and I'm sorry I missed the rest of the talk, so I will catch it online another day.
Great.
But it's so good to hear you guys doing this work. And my friend Chuck Dern from Doylestown here is the one that shared your link with me. So I see
Okay.
you've done a lot of other, we'll be tapping into that. So thank you.
Great. And if we look at it, just all the people at St. Joe's and how we work together, from Dale to Nancy, to Michael Pardellis, to Helen, to Joanne, to, you know, Steffi, everybody. It's, if you look at it, you know, that in of itself could be a miracle. We come all from all different parts of the country. Now, all of a sudden, we're all working together, helping to shape and influence people's lives. That in of itself, you know, being able to having the privilege to work with everybody, you know, is great. It's just, you know, it's just a great
Truly
community.
a gift.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
I appreciate gifts every day. So thank
Well,
you for being there.
I have one kind of closing question for you, Kevin, and you spoke about your second book. And I think it's pretty fascinating that you are looking into various faith communities, such as our very own Sisters of Mercy, and how they have affected the US healthcare delivery system to what it is today, without divulging, too much, because it's your second book, and I know you're still working on it. What's your thinking there, Kevin, in what you are going to be revealing or talking about in your book?
Well, at St. Joseph's College, we have a Catholic leadership track in healthcare administration. So I was reading the other day, well, it was a couple of weeks ago, one of the sisters came over and was talking to the Pope. He said, we need help. Long story short, the Pope says, we'll go back and do it. So she goes back and does it. And if you look back at the pandemic in Philadelphia in the early 1900s, who was there to take care of people? Sisters and people of other faith that came in and would do things that other people wouldn't do. So when I was looking at it, I said, my gosh, we have all these healthcare delivery books. It says, here's how we do healthcare. But no mention of who's doing that, who's taking care. Because when patients are, they're at the most vulnerable state, they're like I felt like a number. I felt like nobody cared about me. I had a colostomy. So I thought I was the only one in the world that had one. And I was very angry that I had this. And a nurse came in and calmed me down and said, this is what we're going to do. Because I'm like a neat freak. I don't like things out of place. And having a colostomy is like the worst thing for someone that's, OCD like I am, with things got to be in its place, got to be neat. And you see about the care, and I got into healthcare along, with Pat and, other people who've experienced this. My goal was to take care of patients that other people wouldn't talk to or give them the time of day. So when you see this and you look back in history, you always see a person of faith, a sister, someone, a doctor, a nurse that is in there based on faith, having the faith strong enough to say, I'm going to take care of this person when other people wouldn't, because they were taking care of the people with the yellow fever and no worries of contracting it themselves. So they were out there to take care of everybody. So that shaped the healthcare environment. So the book I'm working on getting shaped and put into the publisher is just to describe and explain that this is the healthcare delivery model, but it's also based on everybody else that contributed to it, whether it be Sisters of Mercy, the IHM nuns, other faiths that came in and took care of patients that other people wouldn't. So that's going to be the foundation of the book, to explain that this is where healthcare is at today, and this is why we're here. So not only we're going to give them the whole, like, what's a hospital, what's a ambulatory surgical center, what's office-based surgeries, what's this, what's that, what's a diagnosis versus rule out. But we're also going to say that here's how we got here, through the caring and loving, tender, compassionate, healing presence of people coming in to take care of somebody that other people wouldn't. This is how the healthcare system evolved. So that's what thankfully Jones and Bartlett said, oh yeah, we'll do that. You just got to write up a 2-page argument, for it, or supporting document. They said, but that's just semantics. They already have it, they approved, and I just have to put it through. So, but I think it's important everybody knows that, this work, the healthcare system today, isn't because we knew how to make money. We knew how to take care of people. We knew how to take care of patients and their families. And that's how the healthcare system evolved to what it's at today. So.
Well, so very interesting and so well said, Kevin. And what a really great way to end this evening's conversation. thank you for your wonderful presentation, and thank everyone for joining Front Row with the faculty. Just a great representation of the talented faculty we have at St. Joseph's College, the passionate faculty for sure. We appreciate all you do for us, Kevin, and thank you for this evening.
And I'd be mistaken if I didn't mention like Carmina and some other program directors. I mentioned Dale and Nancy and Susan, but you know, Carmina's group or her program that Michael went through is truly an inspiration. You know, you look at it and say, you know, it's great. So, you know, I love the healthcare admin, but I also love just being around, listening to how they're doing their program in theology. So she's also a great friend and a great contributor, and one that makes you feel comfortable being here. So.
Well, thank you again, Kevin.
All right, well, thanks.
Thanks everyone
Well,
for joining us. The next Front Row with the faculty is going to be June 9th and June 23rd. And then we will take a little bit of a break for July and August and start again in September, second and fourth Wednesday of each month. And we appreciate your participation. Take good care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Kevin.
Bye.